The name Moto Guzzi conjures up lots of different images for different people. Lots of people, when you mention that name, will think of racing, circuit racing and track racing and even road racing, because they've been very successful through the years. They've been successful in the Isle of Man TT and they've won loads and loads of different races throughout Europe. So I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised to see a brand new Moto Guzzi model bearing this famous name, Le Mans. Now, people of my age, shall we say 25-ish, maybe touching 30, might remember the Le Mans of the 70s. It was an 850 and it was fantastic. I remember sitting in the showrooms and drooling over it many a time. Well, this is the new version. It's called the V11 Le Mans. And it looks to me like, well, I don't know, I suppose I'd call it a classic racer, really. It retains this classic racing lines. The way this fairing is sort of, well, it's only a half fairing, sort of stretched back here to this big, sort of very long petrol tank. Reminds me of the old Rickman races of the 70s, especially with this round, very flat headlamp there. So it might look like an old classic racer, but it's packed with the very latest technology. Guzzi have been very careful to retain those famous classic lines of yesteryear. Yet they've managed to produce a machine which feels as fresh and lively as any modern-day superbike. The motor is torquey, and for a big V-twin it's relatively vibration-free. Steering is sharp and positive, and there's no tendency to waver when it's tipped hard into a corner. The 6-speed gearbox is nice and smooth, there's no nasty clunks or bangs. In fact, it really is a nice bike to ride. So let's have a closer look then at this Le Mans. It's a sports bike, as we say, so we look for things that we associate with sports bikes. It's the only way you can measure one against another, really. So let's start at the front end. Suspension. Upside down forks, eh? Nothing wrong with them, we like them. These are Marzocchi and they're adjustable, so you can play with them if you so desire, but nothing wrong with them, very good. Twin discs, of course, at the front. We'd expect to find twin discs. Brembo calipers, just about the best you can get there. Fantastic stopping power on this, I have to say. Alloy wheels now. No spoke wheels on these. You wouldn't expect spoke wheels on a sports bike. They wouldn't last 5 minutes, would they? Coming back a little bit further there, we'd expect to see this, wouldn't we? On a Moto Guzzi, of course. 90-degree V-twin, 1064 cc's, and it chucks out 91 brake horsepower. And you might know that I'm not a great fan of V-twins, but I have to say this one is quite nice. Very, very smooth. A lot smoother than some I've ridden, let me tell you that. The engine is black. Look at this. All the engines on all the new Guzzis now are black, and it's got this kind of textured finish on it. And I did ask the question why they were all done like this, and they say, Moto Guzzi say, that they've done it to accentuate the V-twin, to make it look bigger and more brash, more in your face. And does it work? Well, don't know, kind of make your own mind up, really. Fuel injected now, of course, so nice, smooth, very instant sort of power delivery. In there, tucked away, is a brand new 6-speed gearbox. We'd expect to see 6 speeds on a sports bike. Something you might not expect on a sports bike, well, you probably wouldn't, is a shaft drive. Now, I don't know whether you can see very well, but down there is just where it comes out there, comes out the back, and it's a shaft drive, yeah. So you wouldn't normally expect it on a sports bike, but it's fine, it's nice and smooth. The power transmission is very good, nothing wrong with it, so fair enough. Tucked away up there, which you can't really see unless you crawl on the floor, is a single monoshock, white power monoshock, so again, very sporty, that's up there. And this thing here, just look at this. This is the most elaborate rear hugger I've ever seen in my life. I'm not sure whether I like it or I don't really, but it's very, very fancy, whatever you want to say about it. Up here, little seat cowl there to make it this single seat again, to give it this sort of racer look. And down here, big, whacking big silencers, big end cans here. Titanium look, in fact titanium coloured, but not actually titanium. And what they've done now with all these new models is they've stretched the wheelbase on these, so they're a bit longer than they were before, which means we can now run a 180 section rear tyre, so a little bit more rubber on the road. And it's out on the road that you get the benefit from the half fairing. The screen isn't very high, but it does do a pretty good job of keeping the worst of the weather away from the rider. But if you're not into fairings and you like the naked muscle bike look, then there's an alternative model.
Now, the naked version might well be mechanically identical to the Le Mans, but on the road it's a completely different experience. You feel naked and exposed, you get all the bugs and you get all the buffeting, but you know what? I liked it. Having no clothes on, as in fairing, makes it feel more alive. It's instantly responsive and feels big and bad. A sort of, I shouldn't really be having this much fun, so it must be wrong type of feeling. The engine's mega, the gearbox is slick, the whole bike feels spot on. Now forget all about your hypersports plastic fantastics and just get a load of this. I say plastic fantastics. This has got a plastic tank, of course, but the rest of it is all metal. And in fact, it looks as though it's been hewn from the solid. This is a real in-your-face bike. And I really do like all this sort of, you got the big fins, the big beefy engine, beefy front forks, everything's beefy about it. It's a real in-your-face bike. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's what biking's all about. So differences from the Le Mans? Not a lot really. You haven't got a fairing of course, but you could have done with it today because it keeps raining and it's starting to pour now. So you haven't got your fairing, means you've got different indicators and you've got different mirrors. But you save yourself 400 quid on the Le Mans, which isn't bad, is it? In fact, I think it's a bit of a bargain because this one will just cost you 7,599. And I'll tell you what, I quite like this naked business. I reckon I'm going to do it again.